I see a familiar face. Good to see you. The next half an hour, you're going to hear a few times the word AI, but you're also going to hear a lot about the actual impact of adopting a software that is actually heavily powered by artificial intelligence. So let me kick it off. I think we can all agree that the world, as we know it today, is here because of commerce. Countries, companies, and people are transacting every single day and has done it for literally thousands of years. Maybe not companies, but people. You can say, in contrary, in B2B compared to B2C, this is all about the buyer and the seller. It's essential. It's the relationship between the two that makes it very unique in B2B. You could say, contrary to B2C, where it's typically the buyer is one person, in B2B, it's typically split into three roles. You could say you have the business, they have a need, they go exploring, they go on a website, they go to this conference, they express their need to the strategic procurement. That goes out, they make an agreement with a supplier on long-term volume and pricing. And then after that, the operational person takes over, the one that is actually executing. That person is in charge of the day-to-day, the monthly procurement for that company. If we're looking at it from the buyer's point of view, you can say they have received the need from the business, and the only thing they need to do here is essentially to execute an order. Let's say it as it is. This is the majority of the transactions in the world. We just heard from a great panel that the buyer journey is changing. No doubt it's changing. But if we're looking at the majority of the transactions in the world, this is more or less how it works. And we have done a lot of things to change this, but this is a fact. So if we're looking at it from the seller, what have they tried to do? Over the last decade, they wanted to, of course, modernize and digitize their revenue flow. So they introduced e-commerce platforms. And sounded like a great idea, and it is. But there's a catch. You can say, if you look at it from the buyer side, they were suddenly in a situation where every time this operational buyer needed to go and buy a product, they were faced with multiple web shops from all these different suppliers. And we're not talking about a person that is just sitting and chit-chatting and so on. That's a person who's responsible for executing tens of orders every single day. So that created, of course, challenges when it was like this. And you can say for the seller, the world was not static either. So they had to provide support in the market for a lot of different channels. What you're seeing here is probably very familiar to some of you. And this is what you have been tasked to from the management to figure out how to solve. If we're looking at the email channel, many of you, especially in manufacturing, will probably recognize that behind the salespeople or customer support, there is email. So roughly 50 to 70% of your revenue is email. Then you invested for a long time in EDI, because that was sort of what IT could offer. Then IT said, let's do e-commerce, let's build a digital department, build it out. Valtech is in the room, right? Can Valtech raise their hand? Hey Valtech, thank you so much for the 2024 Voice of the Manufacturing Leaders. Essentially that put numbers to a fact that for many is something we have ignored for a long time. That is the fact that if you really do well, you will end up somewhere between 5 to 9% that is coming in via the so-called e-commerce platform. When we hear about numbers of digital and so on, it's not to talk negative about it, right? But we are always connecting EDI and e-commerce, digital sales. So essentially you end up with a high majority that is non-digitized. To make it even more problematic, if you go a step deeper, what is actually happening inside the organization of the seller We heard a bit about it this morning from another guy. There is so much complexity. So if you're looking at this Sankey chart, how is revenue actually flowing, very simplified view, through the organization? It means these channels are capturing the transaction, but behind the scenes, it's still 90% that is human driven. 90% is human driven. 90%. What do I mean? What is that actually? I think this is the classical analogy, right, of the iceberg, but it is very powerful. Give me a second to explain. What we have done for a long time, and is still doing, is tickling around on the surface, figuring out how can we as sellers have a more efficient way of capturing this hopeful high inflow of transactions that we have. We have created more or less sophisticated ways of doing it, catering to the needs of these 3 different buyers, like better ways to explore, all that different things. What actually happens underneath the surface to get these transactions through are significantly more complex. If we're looking at it, you could say, is the customer in a credit block? That's probably not the first time you guys are hearing about that. Or did the customer think they needed to pay one price, but actually it's another price? Or the shipping date, the delivery date that they requested doesn't match anymore. You can say some of these things EDI is simply not made to solve. Some of these things e-commerce is simply not capable of supporting you with because you cannot expose that data to your customers. And then you can say one of the big challenges is as well that there is so much tacit knowledge lying with your customer service people and your sales that are making sure that these transactions actually end up going through. But they are very much tacit, very much intangible things that are hard to document. That's why you guys, if you represent a company that is doing, let's say, 1 billion euros, you will probably, out of that 300,000-400,000 orders a year, whatever you have, see hundreds of thousands of variations on your orders. What does that mean? That means not a single order, more or less, or maybe every second one, has one way of going through your company. The rest of them is slightly unique. And that is why this conference has been so relevant for years, because we have tried to figure out how do we actually digitize this. Some of the, very pioneering companies have started to explore autonomous commerce and this autonomous execution fabric. And what is this? This is essentially what we call at least the future of commerce for B2B. It is a layer that is tightly integrated to the backend, meaning your ERP, your CRM, wherever you store product data, for example, and so on, but as well servicing the channels that you have. So when that unstructured, typically, input comes from those channels, emails, e-commerce, and so on, and there happens to be exceptions happening, a credit block, whatever it could be, that layer tries to do its best to execute on those exceptions, mimicking what the humans would do in real life. So in its essential form, how we see it is the future of B2B commerce is autonomous, not agentic, autonomous. That is essentially the goal that you guys have been going for or towards for years. The era is essentially about moving the revenue faster. And instead of standing here and talking about how this actually plays out, what is the impact that you guys will see over the next decade, I think it's much more fitting to invite Anders Lichti to the stage. And I will just introduce you shortly, Anders. Anders Lichti is the CIO of a company called Nilfisk. And he essentially, and the team, adopted autonomous commerce now, is it a year ago? A year ago. And he's going to take you through their journey and their results.
So good to be here. I hope you can hear me also at the back end of the room. Fantastic. So, as Bjarke said, we are a company called Nilfisk. We are actually almost 120 years old, with all that legacy in our systems and customer relationships, as you can imagine. Basically, what we do is that we make cleaning machines. And we are primarily a B2B company, so 95% of our revenues is from B2B. And we do all kinds of sizes of cleaning machines, and we are in the top 3 of the global cleaning machine industry. We have approximately 1 billion euros in revenue. We have 40 sales organizations around the world, and we have almost 5,000 employees. That is all right. So back to a couple or 2 years ago, we sat down and we looked at our order-to-cash process because it was simply out of control. We are in the situation where we've bought a lot of companies along the journey, and we have 13 ERP systems. Luckily, we only had one CRM system, Salesforce, and that was a little bit to our luck, I would say. So, as Bjarke said, during the last year, we've implemented the autonomous fabric, autonomous commerce into Nilfisk. And we basically have changed from a situation where the majority, which is around 70% of all our orders coming in on email, and then automating all the emails. So we are in a situation, as we are here today, that 90% of all our revenues is now digital. We've been also on a journey on optimizing our e-commerce presence. We've been invested a lot of millions during the last many years, and we have 7.5% of our B2B revenue in our e-commerce sales channels. So we needed to do something different, and autonomous commerce was, for us, the trick. So again here, a very low number of revenue coming through our e-commerce channels, and EDI being around these 16%. What I've also highlighted here on the left, on the right to you, is that our first time right, meaning the quality of our orders, sales orders coming through EDI, only 60% comes in with the right quality at the first time. On average, we have 2.5 blockages of EDI orders per EDI order. So it's really, really a challenge with the EDI channel. And so with e-commerce, and so with our marketplaces. So when we started out a couple of years ago looking at our order-to-cash process, we were in a situation that our customer satisfaction or customer loyalty, NPS score, were down at 13. Many reasons, but primarily due to the order-to-cash and delivery processes in our company. That has changed definitely during the last couple of years. But 13, I'm sure that many of you here in this room have an NPS score, had an NPS score of more than 13, which is low. We also looked at the throughput time, so how long time did it take from a sales order when we received a sales order until we delivered and we invoiced and we got payment from our customers. 54 days, and to Bjarke's point, with more than 25,000 different variants of our order-to-cash process. 25,000 different process variants. And then half of our orders, they were disputed. And we also had a clear look on our customer master data quality, and on a scale from 1 to 10, it was down to 2. So a significant change and cleanup needed to happen here. So we introduced a year ago the autonomous execution fabric from Go Autonomous, basically taking all the emails, the 70% of our sales orders coming in via email, linking it into Salesforce, our CRM system, so our customer service agents, they would have the exact same UI to handle acceptance and challenges of orders coming in. And then we integrated it with our big ERP system in our company, which is SAP, which is approximately 85% of our revenues. And then most importantly, I would actually say, before we even started the project, we started by using process mining or process intelligence. And it sounds fancy, right? But it was just applying Celonis to all our order-to-cash processes and trying to figure out where are we, how many variants, throughput times, all these process metrics. And that is, I think for us, was the trick to start having a process focus instead of just having a lot of assumptions. An assumption being that EDI must be the most perfect way of handling orders from our customers, and obviously it wasn't. So, as you can see here, we scale quite fast. I would say that the adoption, and this is really, really important, the adoption from our customers' point of view was instant, right? So they didn't need to change anything. They just kept on doing what they were doing, sending us emails with orders. And then at the back end, we automated all the work that needed to be done. So you can see that we scaled up. We launched country by country. And now we are at 72% of our revenue, which comes in through our autonomous execution fabric. So, and this is just an illustration that after many years of trying to get more customers to adopt e-commerce, EDI for that matter, we in 1 year's time with a fast take-up and fast adoption actually have created the most efficient sales channels when we talk about throughput times and quality of first time right in the company. So quite amazing, I would say. And these are some of the end results, you can say. Throughput time from, as you remember, the 54 days and down with 21 days. Imagine how that will help your net present net working capital. A process variance of minus 20%, and we believe we can do more. And then finally, less errors, right? Because we are capturing it autonomously without any manual work from our customer service agents. I know that not a lot of companies are talking too much about it, at least not in Europe, but we actually along the way also have saved approximately 35 customer service employees along the way. So, and then more opportunities here to do even more. And that was also the situation we were failed with: too high complexity, too poor processes, and too many people needing to do a lot of manual work. Yes, that was it. Hope you got a little bit of inspiration.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. How many of you have heard that story before? 2 people. 2 people. That's amazing. So if you're not aware, and I guess it's sort of starting to settle in, that journey that you saw there from like 20-25% to 90%, how many of you have actually heard about that before? A question out to the audience. How many of you have heard about that in less than 12 months, you can go up to that level? None of you. And that is essentially, I think that's essentially the promise that we're all talking about, where what can AI deliver? And people have a very hard time making it tangible. What is actually the initiatives we need to do? And to give you a little bit of a background on Go Autonomous, my name is Bjarke, as was told earlier. I used to work for companies just like you. I was leading digital for Saint-Gobain in the Nordics, for Airbus, concentrating on figuring out how can we make the revenue essentially flow faster through the organization. And then I had a little bit of an epiphany around 8 years ago, where Airbus, we tested out trying to apply very simple NLP models to try and digitize quotes landing in the inbox. And this was just about the time when Google DeepMind started to release some of those open source models. We overfitted it completely to the Airbus data. But what was more interesting was after 9 months, we was live with that model. And it turned out that from day one, it took away 30% of the time for 150 people. 30% of the time. That in itself was interesting, but what was more interesting was essentially that software suddenly could understand how we humans operate. That was actually what turned out for me to be the reason to start Go Autonomous 5 years ago and start the journey of autonomous commerce. What you're looking at here is essentially what you saw already earlier. It's the fabric that are sort of tightly connected to your backend to be able to execute just like we humans do, even more sophisticated, but also connected to, what can I say, the channels that we actually provide to the market, right? You are probably going to hear about agentic commerce quite a lot the next 2 days, because it's sort of like the thing for the manufacturers and distributors of the world. It's going to be big. It's going to be big. Let's see. What is really interesting here to be aware of is that what you maybe learned today or got refreshed is that that channel is going to have exactly the same challenges that you've seen before. And maybe even more, because it's so up to the buyer of how to express themselves. It's much more an exploratory need. So what you're going to see in a second is essentially how our interpretation of agentic commerce as a new channel, how can this fabric that we have support that? So we're working together with Google Gemini and OpenAI to provide, what could you say, for Nilfisk, for example, a white-labeled app that they can expose to all the buyers they have. Meaning, imagine that a buyer sits here in their, this is OpenAI, but this could be Microsoft Copilot or Gemini, whatever corporate Copilot they have. They have a quote, they upload the Excel they got from their ERP or the buyer. They see the card. This is data directly from, let's say, Nilfisk. It's not Nilfisk prices, by the way. We cannot show that. Here they get the card. They know, okay, actually it looks good. Ask if they actually just want to convert it directly into an order. Yeah, that would be great. It's been asked, is there a purchase order number? Because there needs to be one, right? So the buyer actually has created the order, gets the purchase order number there, is appointed a PO number from the seller, but it's also asked, by the way, do you just want your default address or do you want something else? This is the experience that you guys most likely right now would like to provide because you believe, oh, there could be a potential. But just keep in mind, to be able to make this possible, not just to be sophisticated data capturing, you actually need the things in the back, the things that makes it run. And that I think we have as a collective group forgotten. And now we need to awaken, and I think seeing Anders here presenting what he has also gone through of realizing over the last 24 months is what we all need to look up to and start thinking about. Because that is actually where the money lies for a lot of us. It's, what can we say, blocked in the working capital, all those days that it takes to actually execute the order. That was what we wanted to say. Thank you very much. If you're interested in hearing more, we are standing out just outside here, talking, of course, a lot about autonomous commerce and our execution fabric. Thank you so much.
Thank you.